poor single father opens his door to a stranger on a rainy night. He thought he was just doing the right thing, but he had no idea that girl was the heir to a billion-dollar empire, and his life would never be the same. Before we get started, while you're lying comfortably, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you really love what I'm sharing here. Comment below and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Let's get started. 12 hours in a tiny garage at the end of the street. Greasy hands, aching back eyes, burning from exhaust fumes. But Ethan Miller didn't complain. He simply washed his hands under the cold tap, then grabbed the worn-out coat slung over his chair. The wall clock said 10:43 p.m. Late. Lucas was probably already asleep on the couch, toothbrush untouched. Ethan sighed and stepped outside. Cold wind slipped under his collar, carrying the smell of metal gasoline and just a hint of late winter. His old pickup truck sat quietly under a flickering streetlight rust, eating at its body like old scars that never healed. He turned the key, dashboard lights flickered once, then died. Of course. He muttered a quiet curse and tapped the steering wheel gently, like calming a stubborn child. 3 more days until payday. His wallet held nothing but a crumpled grocery receipt. It wasn't a new feeling, that sense of trying to hold everything together when inside you're falling apart. At home, the room was dark. The hallway light blinked half-heartedly. On the couch, Lucas was curled under a thin blanket, mouth slightly open in some silent dream. One side of the table held an unfinished 5th-grade math worksheet. The other, a cup of milk gone cold. Ethan knelt, pulled the blanket up over his son's chest, and kissed his forehead. "My boy," he whispered, not sure if he was talking to Lucas or to himself. "I'm trying. Really trying." He stood up, opened the fridge. Empty. 3 eggs in a carton, half a box of milk, and a leftover meal from 2 nights ago. Everything in the kitchen looked just as tired as its owner. Ethan sat at the table, elbows resting, face buried in his rough hands. No one knew, but every single day was a test of endurance. How to be a father and a mother. How to keep living without letting Lucas see how fragile his father really was. Outside, the rain began. First of the season, cold, steady, and alone. Ethan glanced out the window, and that's when he saw her. A figure, small, thin, standing under the streetlight. Soaked hoodie clinging to her frame, hair plastered to her cheeks, arms hugging herself like she was the only warmth she had. She didn't move, didn't run, just stood there like a shadow the world forgot. Something tugged at Ethan's chest in a way he couldn't explain. He opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The wind caught his coat and snapped it around his legs. "Hey," he called softly. The girl didn't turn. "You can't stay out here. You'll catch cold in this rain." Silence. Only the sound of rain tapping the roof like a sad lullaby. Ethan turned to go back inside, but then he heard it soft. A tired exhale. Not a cry for help, not even a sob. Just the sound of someone completely spent. He turned back, paused for a moment, then took off his coat and walked toward her. "I'm not going to ask who you are. I don't need to know why you're out here. But if you've got nowhere to go, you can stay the night, just until the rain stops." He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Her rain-drenched eyes met his for just a second, just long enough for Ethan to see it. Fear. Not of him. Of something deeper. Something she'd been carrying far too long. Without another word, Ethan turned and walked back toward the house. The door stayed open behind him, and about 30 seconds later, he heard footsteps. Quiet, careful. She had come in. He didn't know if he'd done the right thing or something foolish. All he knew was, sometimes kindness starts with a glance, and sometimes it's the only thing that can save 2 people who are just trying to survive the night. The small house had only 2 rooms, one for Lucas, one for Ethan. So that night, Ethan laid out an old foam mattress in the corner of the garage, still faintly smelling of oil and metal. He handed the girl a dry towel, a clean t-shirt, and a worn-out blanket. She didn't say a word, just nodded. So slight Ethan might have missed it if he hadn't been looking. He turned to leave, but paused. She was sitting hunched in the corner, arms around her knees, eyes wide with something between disbelief and exhaustion. Like she didn't quite trust the kindness, or maybe didn't know what to do with it. Ethan spoke softly. "If you're hungry, there's some canned soup in the kitchen. Not great, but it'll warm you up." Then he walked out, gently closed the garage door behind him, and left that same question circling in his mind. Did I just let a stranger into my house? Am I out of my mind? 15 minutes later, Ethan was fumbling with the last can of soup over the stove. She stepped into the kitchen, still didn't say anything. The t-shirt hung loosely from her shoulders. Her hair was damp, feet bare. She stood there in the doorway, watching the pot bubble on the old gas stove. Ethan didn't turn. He grabbed an extra bowl, filled it, placed it gently on the wobbly table. Sit. You don't have to say anything. Just eat. She hesitated, then quietly sat down. It was the first time Ethan saw her hands, thin, scratched. Old cuts and new ones layered over each other like stories no one had asked to hear. She held the spoon with both hands like she was afraid to drop it. Each time she brought soup to her lips, she blew on it first carefully, like someone not used to hot meals. Ethan sat across from her. He didn't eat, just watched. There was something about the way she ate that reminded him of Lucas when he was younger, back when Sarah had just passed. The boy used to eat like this, too slow, careful, as if afraid that if he finished too quickly, the warmth might disappear. And like Lucas back then, she didn't speak. She just ate silently, but never absent-minded. Some people, when they're quiet, say more than words ever could. Phew. What's your name? Ethan asked, once her bowl was nearly empty. She looked up, lips pressed. Then almost in a whisper she said, Emily. Ethan nodded, didn't push further. Emily, no last name, no backstory, as if she was holding space between herself and whatever she'd left behind. What time is it? She asked, voice barely there. Hoarse, but steady. Ethan checked the clock on the wall. 11:37. You have a kid here, she asked. Yeah, Lucas, he's 10. She nodded again. I heard a child breathing, soft, but real. Ethan blinked, then understood. Someone who's slept outside, who's lived in fear, learns to hear like an animal in the woods. He didn't ask where she came from, didn't ask why she was in the rain, didn't ask who she might be running from, because it was clear she wasn't ready to be asked, and he wasn't close enough to be let in. That night, Ethan lay on the sofa, a thin blanket pulled up to his chest. In the next room, Lucas slept, clutching a one-eared teddy bear. In the garage, Emily was probably asleep, or trying to be. Rain drummed gently on the roof, like fingers tapping old memories. Ethan stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open. He didn't know what had just begun. All he knew was, since the moment he opened that door to her, something in his world had shifted. And that shift, strangely enough, felt a little like the truth. The next morning, soft sunlight slipped through the gray clouds and brushed against the kitchen curtain. Not much, but just enough to make the cold feel a little less sharp. Ethan woke up at 6, like he always did. His eyes still burned. His back still ached, not from sleep, but something else. He had never brought a stranger into his home, especially not when Lucas was under the same roof. As he stepped into the kitchen, he heard the familiar thudding of little feet, Lucas wide awake, charging out of his room like a ball of pure energy. 10 years old, and never out of batteries. Dad, I think I saw someone in the garage last night. Ethan turned and saw his son standing at the doorway, hair a mess, eyes bright, arms still holding his old teddy bear named Sam. Yeah, Ethan replied calmly. She's a friend of mine. Just needed a place to rest for the night. Lucas squinted, like, a homeless person? Ethan paused, not because of the question, but because of how freely the boy asked it. Lucas meant no judgment. He didn't look at Emily like a stray or an outsider. To him, she was simply another human being now in his world. Her name's Emily, Ethan said. And, yeah, you could say that. Lucas nodded thoughtfully, then suddenly said, I like having another person in the house. Feels nice. Emily walked into the kitchen a few minutes later. She didn't sneak in, just quiet, wearing the same hoodie now dry and warm from the heater, hands clutching the hem of her sleeves like a nervous habit. Lucas stared. Emily stared back. 2 pairs of eyes, one wide and curious, the other, wary and worn, met and held for a moment longer than usual. Hi, Lucas spoke first. Did you have breakfast yet? Emily blinked, surprised. Maybe she wasn't used to kids who talked like that, so open, so real. No, she said, voice still raspy. Lucas darted toward the cabinet, pulled out a box of cereal, filled 2 bowls, then poured milk into both. Ethan watched, mildly stunned. Lucas had never done that for anyone but his dad. Eat with me, the boy said. You'll like it. The milk expired 2 days ago, but Dad says it's still fine if you heat it a little. Ethan winced. Lucas? What, she won't mind, right? Lucas grinned. And Emily smiled. Just a little, but enough to warm the whole kitchen. They ate breakfast together, 3 people at a small table. No one said much, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was just there, quiet company. Lucas filled the space anyway. He talked about his class, about how Tom always stole cookies during math, and how the new teacher was really nice, except when she got mad and threw chalk. Emily listened, head slightly bowed, a faint curve on her lips. She didn't interrupt, but it was clear she was paying attention, fully. And then suddenly, Lucas turned and asked, "Miss Emily, who are you running from?" The air shifted, just slightly. Ethan opened his mouth to cut in, but Emily raised a hand gently, as if to say, "It's okay, let me answer." She looked at Lucas, her eyes steady, quiet but no longer hiding. "I'm not running from anyone," she said. "I'm just looking for a place where no one asks who I am." Lucas nodded like he understood, then returned to eating spoon, clinking against the bowl. "I think this is that kind of place," he said through a mouthful of cereal. "No one asks anything here. Dad just asks me if I brushed my teeth." Ethan chuckled, couldn't help it. Emily looked at him for the first time, really looked. And in that gaze, something softened, like fog, lifting just a little. Not fully, but enough for a sliver of light to get in. That afternoon, Ethan went back to the garage. Emily offered to stay behind, do some dishes, keep an eye on the house. He nodded, still unsure of so many things, but something inside him said yes. Lucas, meanwhile, chirped on and on, "Dad, Miss Emily washes dishes real good, like Mom used to." Ethan paused, just for a beat. It had been a long time, a really long time, since Lucas had spoken of his mom in that voice light, not heavy. And Ethan realized, some people don't need to do much. They just have to show up at the right moment to soften even the driest corners of your heart. Night fell. The rain had stopped, but the cold stayed. Not the kind that stings your skin, but the kind that seeps into your bones and makes it hard to sleep. Ethan lay on the sofa like always. Lucas was sound asleep in his room, arms wrapped around a one-eared teddy. Emily, after dinner, had quietly retreated to the garage. It had become her place, familiar in a strange way. Ethan didn't lock the door. He wasn't fully sure about her yet, but he also didn't want her to feel like a prisoner. And in that silence, a sound floated in. Faint, almost too soft to notice, like a cat's meow caught in the wind. If he hadn't been listening for anything, he might have ignored it. But then it came again. A low, pained whimper, like someone lost inside a storm they couldn't wake from. He sat up, heart pounding, not from fear, but something deeper, a quiet instinct. The garage door was slightly ajar. Soft yellow light spilled from a small bulb above the coat hook. Emily lay curled on the old foam mattress, soaked in sweat despite the cold. Her breath came in broken gasps, chest rising in uneven jolts. No screams, no cries. Just short, sharp exhales and fists clenched around the blanket, like she was wrestling something no one else could see. "Emily," Ethan said gently. No response. Her body trembled. Her mind, clearly still caught in that other place. He moved closer, didn't touch her, just sat near the mattress and spoke, voice low, steady. "It's Ethan. You're okay. Just a dream. That's all." Her body jerked once. Eyes flew open, but they didn't see him. Not yet. She stared past him, straight into the air, as if whatever haunted her was still there. "Emily," he whispered again, softer this time. "You're safe." And slowly, her eyes found him, then dropped to the floor. A full minute passed before she exhaled, like something heavy had just unclenched its grip on her lungs. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, didn't ask what she saw, or how long it had been like this. Because sometimes, what someone needs most isn't a question, but someone quietly sitting beside them until the dark passes. A few minutes later, she sat up, still not looking at him, but her voice, shaky low, finally came. "I'm sorry. I'm not used to having someone witness this." Ethan nodded. "No need to be. Most nights, I just stay awake. But tonight, I guess I was too tired." He smiled faintly. "Everyone breaks sometimes." She turned her head away, but didn't leave, didn't make an excuse. And that was the first time Ethan saw her stay after a moment of weakness. After a pause, she spoke again. It wasn't clear whether she was talking to him or to herself. "It's not a nightmare. It's a memory, but the kind without dialogue." Ethan didn't interrupt, didn't need to. That sentence alone was enough for him to understand. There were chapters in Emily's past that had been torn out. No words, just images, sounds, and feelings too deep to name. You. The next morning, nothing was said about the night before. Emily cleaned the kitchen like usual. Lucas chattered away about a group project at school, and Ethan brewed coffee, watching them move around one another with an ease that felt almost normal. But Ethan had started noticing things. Emily always sat with her back to a wall. She flinched slightly at the sound of a car horn outside. When Lucas accidentally slammed a door, she recoiled like muscle memory. No one can fake calm when they're afraid. And Emily was living with a fear that had no name but never left her side. That evening, as Ethan closed the garage door, he lingered a few seconds longer. Through the gap, he saw her flipping through an old notebook, his budget ledger. He smiled faintly. She wasn't sleeping early tonight, but this time it wasn't because of fear. Maybe, just maybe, it was because she was beginning to learn how to live. And he knew. Some people don't need saving. They just need a quiet place to heal on their own. It was an ordinary morning. Ethan was crouched under the chassis of an old truck, hands greasy, a half-tightened bolt between his teeth. Emily sat a few feet away, flipping through a worn-out repair manual. She didn't say much, just glanced at him now and then with a quiet curiosity. Lucas was in the corner with his colored pencils drawing on a sheet of A4, a truck with 3 little figures inside it. The radio buzzed in the background, familiar like white noise. Nobody really listened, until the host lowered his voice, gave a little pause. And in this morning's update, authorities are still searching for Helena Hartman, the only daughter of finance magnate William Hartman. The 18-year-old has been missing for nearly 3 weeks, believed to have fled her family estate in Vermont. The wrench in Ethan's hand slipped, clattered against the cement with a cold, sharp ring. He looked up, at Emily, just for a second. But that second was enough. Her body hadn't moved. She was still sitting in the same place, but her fingers had frozen mid-turn on the page. Her face turned slightly away, just enough to hide the breath she had just lost. Ethan said nothing. He just looked at her closer than before. And for the first time, he saw something eerily familiar between that name on the radio and the girl in front of him. That afternoon, Emily and Lucas washed the dishes together like they always did. But instead of telling stories from school, Lucas leaned in, whispered, "Did you hear the news this morning?" Emily paused, then nodded gently. "I did. You don't seem like that Helena girl. She's a rich kid, but you eat egg porridge with us." Emily chuckled quietly, not quite fully, a smile with a hint of something behind it. Sadness, maybe, or evasion. "Maybe I'm just her broken version." Lucas tilted his head. "Do you have the same name?" "Maybe." The answer was vague, but the boy didn't seem to care. Lucas didn't need a last name. He only needed to feel safe, and Emily had given him that. That evening, Ethan placed 2 mugs of hot tea on the scratched wooden table. Emily sat across from him. For the first time in days, they didn't avoid each other's eyes. Ethan didn't skirt around it. He asked straight, "That name on the news, is that you?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked down. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I don't care about your family or who you were, but I need to know, is someone looking for you? Is there danger coming?" She raised her eyes finally, and this time there was no panic, only the deep fatigue of someone who'd been running for far too long. "Yes, it's me. But I'm not running away. I just left a place that stopped feeling like home." Ethan stayed silent for a moment. He understood that feeling of being surrounded by walls, luxury, even safety, and still not belonging. "Are you in danger?" he asked again. "Not if they don't take me back." The pause between them stretched. Outside, the wind slipped through the cracks, in the old door sighing like the house itself. "My father, he arranged a marriage for me, like a business deal, a merger. I didn't choose money. I chose a dinner table where no one asked me who I was." Ethan nodded. He didn't say "I understand," because truly he couldn't. But he believed this much. Everyone deserves the right to choose their own life. "I can't promise safety here," he said, voice low. "There are no guards, no fences. But if you need time, I won't take it away from you." Emily looked at him, and in that look, something shifted. Not all at once, not completely, but enough to let him know she wasn't leaving, not tonight. That night, as Ethan tucked Lucas in, the boy asked, "Dad, if someone lives in a place that doesn't fit, and they find somewhere new, can they stay?" Ethan brushed his son's messy hair, smiled gently. "If that place truly welcomes them, then yes, son, They can stay. Lucas nodded, satisfied, and drifted off to sleep. Ethan lay awake longer, thinking about a girl with another name from another life, now sitting in his kitchen, eating egg porridge like any ordinary person. He didn't know where this would all lead. All he knew was, every secret carries a choice. And this time, it seemed Emily had chosen to stay. Friday afternoon. Ethan had just wiped the grease from his hands when the doorbell rang. It wasn't loud, but somehow it echoed oddly in the heavy late autumn air. He stepped out still in a faded shirt sleeves, rolled sweat matting his hair. Standing at the front door was a man he didn't recognize. Tall, composed shoes, polished to a mirror, finish untouched by mud. Dark suit, stiff collar, and eyes that read, "People like open files." "Mr. Miller," the man asked. Ethan nodded. "You are—" Instead of answering, the man held out a simple business card. No logo, just a name. Benjamin Royce. Executive Consultant, Hartman Holdings. Ethan read it once. That was all he needed. "We're looking for someone," Benjamin said, voice flat, not warm, not cold. "A young woman. Her name is Helena Hartman. You might know her, or maybe not." Ethan stood firm in the doorway, arms crossed. He didn't flinch, didn't lie, just said, "I don't know anyone named Helena." "She may be using another name," Benjamin continued, lips drawn tight with restraint. "She disappeared without a trace. Her family is deeply concerned." Concerned, Ethan almost laughed. Was it her well-being or their empire that was shaking? "There's no one like that here," he said calmly. "And if there were, they'd speak when they were ready." Benjamin gave a small, dry smile, the kind grown men use on children who say silly things. "Mr. Miller, I don't think you understand what you're involved in. She's not just some girl, and this isn't a game." Ethan's expression hardened, voice low. "I don't care who she is. Here she's just a person, like me." Benjamin studied him, like measuring how stubborn he was willing to be. Then with a clipped nod, he stepped back and said, "If you see her, tell her to come home, before someone else starts looking." Then he turned, got into a sleek black car, and vanished, swift and silent like he'd never been there at all. Ethan stood still for a long moment, not out of fear, but something else. A slow, rising heat beneath the ribs. A quiet, smoldering anger. That wasn't a request, that was a warning. He stepped back inside, and there she was. Emily, standing at the threshold, not saying a word, but pale, very pale. She'd heard everything. "Was that your father's man?" Ethan asked gently. Emily nodded, her lips pressed tight like she was biting down on her own fear. "He's right," she whispered. "They won't stop. What do you want to do?" She didn't answer right away, just looked at Ethan, really looked, then spoke, soft, shaky, but real. "Ethan." He froze. That was the first time she'd said his name. Not sir, not you, not avoiding it altogether. Just Ethan. And the way she said it, like someone drowning, finally touching the shore. "I don't know how long I can stay, but if it's still possible, I don't want to run anymore." Ethan didn't smile, didn't rush, but something in his eyes, quiet and steady, said he'd be here as long as she stayed. That night, Lucas wouldn't sleep right away. He brought out a new drawing. This time, there were 4 people. Him, Ethan, Emily, and one figure standing far off, drawn entirely in black. "Who's that?" Ethan asked. Lucas mumbled, "I don't know, but I don't think I like him." Ethan said nothing, just wrapped an arm around his son. And in his gut, he knew. The first wave had hit. But this was just the beginning. Ever since the man in the dark suit left the air in the small house felt heavier. No one brought it up, but both Ethan and Emily knew something was circling the edges. Something unseen, but coming. Lucas, of course, stayed the same. Bright, innocent, bursting with questions and cereal crumbs. But Ethan noticed Emily no longer left the garage door ajar at night. She locked it now, wedged a chair under the handle. A reflex. Bone deep. She spoke less, but moved more. Cleaned the kitchen, reorganized the creaky drawer, cooked meals that started tasting like home. As if piece by piece, she was quietly rebuilding something, not with words, but with her hands. One late afternoon, as golden light filtered through the dusty air of the garage, Emily stepped into Ethan's workspace. She stood there a moment, then said almost like a question, "Can I help with the books?" Ethan blinked. She'd never asked to do anything before. "You know accounting?" he asked, surprised. "Sort of," she said, then smiled. The first real one in days. He nodded, slid the receipts and ledger toward her. Be my guest. That night, they sat side by side under a single yellow lamp. Emily's fingers moved across old bills and notes, neat, efficient, soft, but precise. Ethan watched her jot things down in the margins. Her handwriting was gentle, but steady, like someone who'd been taught to measure everything. My dad made me learn financial records when I was 10, she murmured, eyes still on the page. Ethan stayed quiet. He hadn't expected her to share, especially not about him, the man behind all this. At first, I thought he was teaching me independence, she continued. But really, he was teaching me how to be owned. Every dollar tracked, every contract taught, every dinner planned. She stopped, looked up. Do you know what it feels like to live in a mansion and still want to escape every room? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence spoke what words couldn't. Emily nodded like she felt it too. I didn't run away to be dramatic. I ran because I needed to know, without the name, the money, the weight. Am I still someone? Lucas shuffled in around, then half asleep, clutching a pillow. Miss Emily, will you still be here tomorrow? That simple question landed with a hush. Emily turned to him, brushed back his hair. If your dad doesn't kick me out, then yes, I will. Lucas brightened. Then tomorrow I'll make pancakes. You have to eat with us. Promise. Emily smiled, quiet, warm. Promise. Later that night, Ethan poured himself a glass of water and stood by the window. No strange cars, no suit-wearing shadows, just wind in the trees and quiet on the road. But he knew the Hartman family didn't give up after one visit, and Emily couldn't stay invisible forever. To the world, she was Helena Hartman, the daughter of a man so rich, newspapers joked he could buy a town just to change the speed limit. Ethan had no towns, no lawyers, no guards, just a rented house, a dreamy little boy, and a garage that sometimes couldn't keep the lights on. But he knew this much. If Emily chose to stay, he'd make sure no one dragged her away. Not because he was some hero, but because he knew that feeling of being pulled from the one place that finally made you feel alive. That night, Emily stood at the door to the hallway just before heading to the garage. She didn't look up, didn't say much, just a soft voice barely above the quiet. Thank you for not asking me where I'll go. Ethan replied just as gently, I know you're not ready to leave. At the edge of the table, Lucas's old drawing still sat there, but now he'd added something. Emily stood closer to them, no longer apart, and the man in black was fading. Kids don't always say what they feel, but sometimes their drawings know the truth before anyone else does. The weather forecast said a storm would hit the town around midnight, not a big one, but strong enough to knock out power, strong enough to make people pull their cars into garages and stack sandbags by the door. Ethan wasn't worried. Storms were normal around here, but something else made him uneasy. Not the sky, but the look in Emily's eyes lately, calm on the surface, but quietly, preparing to leave. That afternoon, the rain came earlier than expected. Wind moaned through the rafters. Lucas curled up on the sofa watching cartoons, hands wrapped around a cup of cocoa Emily had made. Ethan was reinforcing the garage door when he noticed her Emily standing behind him, coat-zipped scarf around her neck. Her eyes said everything before she opened her mouth. You're planning to go? He asked, straight to the point. Emily looked down at the cold concrete floor, then nodded. I don't think I can hide forever. They'll come again. Next time, they might not knock. Ethan clenched the wrench in his hand. Not in anger, but something deeper, helplessness. You still have a choice, he said, but don't assume this place can't protect you. She didn't answer right away, but she stepped closer, eyes slightly wet, though he couldn't tell if it was the wind or something else. Ethan, you're kind. Too kind. I don't know if I deserve to stay. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, staying isn't about what you deserve. It's about what you call home. And just as the sky growled and the house went dark, they realized Lucas was no longer on the couch. Lucas, Ethan called out. No reply. They searched the house, empty. Emily's voice broke the silence. Earlier, he said he'd go out back to find some dry pine branches for his craft project. I thought he was just pretending. The wind was howling now, rain pounding the roof. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, threw on his coat, and ran out into the night. Emily followed without hesitation. They searched through the yard, calling his name. Nothing. Then a soft whimper from behind a stack of old tires. Lucas, soaked to the skin, caught under a broken board, scraped knee, bruised arm, but awake. "I'm sorry, Dad. I just wanted to get a pretty branch." Ethan dropped to his knees, held his son close, didn't say a word. Emily knelt beside them. Without thinking, she unwrapped her scarf and tucked it around Lucas. Tears streamed down her cheeks, though she didn't seem to notice. Back inside, Ethan cleaned Lucas's wounds by flashlight. Emily sat beside him holding the boy's hand, and Lucas didn't let go. "I don't want Miss Emily to leave," he whispered. Emily looked at Ethan, and in that moment, amid wind and silence, no more words were needed. She squeezed Lucas's hand, then turned to Ethan. If I still have a choice, I want to stay. I don't know how long this can last, but I'm tired, and this place, it's the first one that doesn't make me want to run." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, didn't say "I understand," didn't say "please stay," but in his eyes was something solid, like a house that may not be pretty, but stands strong in a storm. Outside, the storm hadn't passed, but inside that tiny house, 3 people, no shared blood, no shared past, sat together. A man who used to bury himself in work, a boy who drew with broken pencils, and a girl who'd lived her whole life like a ghost inside a spotlight. For the first time, none of them were hiding. The storm passed during the night, leaving behind a morning soaked and cold. The garage roof sagged a little. Power lines hung limp by the road. The street was littered with broken branches. Ethan was up early as always, coffee not yet hot when the doorbell rang. But this time, it wasn't Benjamin Royce. It was a woman. Tidy suit, hair pulled tight, no smile. But her eyes tired, not threatening, just tired. "I'm Veronica," she said. "Mr. William Hartman's personal assistant." Ethan didn't reply, just stood in the doorway waiting. Veronica glanced around the house, not with disgust, not even judgment, just the quiet caution of someone who'd been trained to assess risk. "We know Helena is here," she said. "No," Ethan answered. "You don't know anything." "You don't have to protect her," Veronica said calmly. "I'm not here to drag her back. I came to deliver a message from her father." She handed him an envelope, plain, no logo, just one name, Emily. That evening, Emily opened the letter. She read it slowly, line by line. Ethan sat at the table, not asking. Lucas was on the floor nearby, working on a new drawing, a sturdy house, sunlight pouring through the window. When she finished reading, Emily folded the letter once, then twice. Her voice didn't tremble, but it was softer, lower. "He didn't apologize," she said. "He just wrote this, 'To you money is a burden. To me, it's a tool.'" Ethan nodded. He understood more than she knew. Emily continued. "He said I can leave. He won't stop me. But if I give up the Hartman name, I lose everything." Her voice dropped. And by everything he means every cent, every connection, every trace of belonging. She went quiet for a long time. Then, as if speaking from the edge of 2 cliffs, "It's like cutting off a root. Even when you know it's rotting, it still hurts to saw through it." Ethan poured her a cup of warm tea, didn't offer advice, didn't rush her. And finally, after a long silence, Emily spoke, soft, slow, but certain. "I'm going to leave it behind, the name, the legacy, all of it. I never felt like I belonged to it anyway. But this..." She held up a piece of paper, the temporary residency form Ethan had filled out for her. In the section marked Family Members, he'd scribbled in, "Lucas Miller, Emily no last name yet." She ran her fingers over that second line, looked at Ethan, then at Lucas. Her voice steady but low. "Would it be all right if I used your last name?" Ethan froze. Before he could answer, Lucas squealed. "That means she's in our family now, right?" Emily laughed, quiet and real. "If your dad agrees." Ethan looked at her, didn't say a word, just nodded. Slow and sure. The next day, Emily filed for a name change. No one forced her, no one chased her. She did it not to disappear, but to finally exist on her own terms. On paper, Helena Hartman vanished. But in a small rented house, Emily Miller began her real life. That night they had dinner by candlelight. Not for romance, just because the power still hadn't come back. No one complained. Lucas told stories about school. Ethan made tea, Emily washed dishes, and in the soft clinking of spoons and running water was the quiet sound of a heart finally warming up again. They didn't say the word family. They didn't have to. Because family doesn't always come from blood. It comes from a place where you can be exactly who you are and still be loved. A month had passed since the storm. The garage was patched up. The streetlight out front had been replaced. Lucas still went to school, still hummed silly tunes while coloring. Ethan, unchanged in rhythm, still worked with his hands, lived with his heart. But now there was something different. A second pair of hands, quietly folding receipts, carrying lunch, pouring tea. And someone else, who no longer slept, hidden away in the garage. Emily Miller. She didn't talk much about the past anymore, but sometimes, late at night, after Lucas had gone to sleep, she'd sit by the window and tell Ethan little things. About sleeping in without makeup, watching cartoons with a child, without being told to grow up getting wet in the rain, not behind bulletproof glass, but actually wet, actually cold, actually breathing. Ethan never interrupted. He never asked to hear it all. He just sat there and understood what mattered most. She was living, and this time for real. Yo. Lucas now called her Miss M. Sometimes Mom M. It came out mixed up natural without shame. The first time Emily heard it, she cried. Not out of sentiment, but because it was the first time in her life someone had called her something that wasn't a title, but a place. Sure. One evening, Emily asked Ethan, "Do you think, if it hadn't rained that night, we still would have met?" Ethan shrugged, half smiling. Maybe, but not at a moment when we both really needed each other. She nodded, eyes far off, but calm. I used to think I had to be strong to deserve love. Now I know sometimes love comes to give you permission to be soft. One Sunday afternoon, Lucas brought them a new drawing. Same little house. But now 3 people stood under a tree together, and under it, in messy handwriting, "Our family, not perfect, but real." Emily stared at it, hand over her mouth. Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. And from that day forward, the days flowed on, not full of fear, not haunted by past names, but held together by small, simple rituals. Emily started working part-time at the town library. She went to the market, bargained over carrots, learned how to make Lucas's favorite pancakes. Ethan still fixed cars, but more customers showed up. Some said, "Ever since that girl with the brown hair started handling your books, you fix cars and offer hot tea." He just smiled, didn't explain. One evening at dinner, Lucas asked, "Dad, when I grow up, can I choose a family like we have?" Ethan looked at him, then at Emily. She was already smiling, her hand finding his under the table. Ethan answered, "You don't have to choose. Just pay attention to who makes you feel like home. That's your family." And that was what they found in each other. Not a big house, not shared blood, not a forever promise. Just this, a man who no longer had to carry everything alone. A child who knew he was loved, not managed. A woman who didn't have to disappear to finally exist. End of story. If you've stayed with this story from the very beginning, truly thank you. You didn't just listen to a tale. You witnessed someone brave enough to leave behind a whole world to find herself. Like this video, subscribe to Social Justice and share it if you believe that sometimes we don't need to save the whole world. We just need to hold on to a small home where someone is free to be themselves. And if you've made it this far, drop a single comment below. I found something in this story. We're here to keep telling the stories that reach the most human part of you. See you in the next one.